Good afternoon, gentlemen. Mr. Edwards, I understand you appear to prosecute this matter.
Yes, I do, Your Honour.
And the defendant is Mr. Melba, Max Melba.
Yes.
And he's charged with offences of theft and unlawful assault.
That's correct, Your Honour. One of those counts being the theft will require his consent to summary jurisdiction before the matter can proceed.
And Mr. Barnes, you appear for Mr. Melba.
I appear for Mr. Melba, Your Honour, and I can indicate that he consents to summary jurisdiction. With your permission, if you take the pleas
I will take the consent through you, thank you.
And he pleads not guilty to both charges.
Good, thank you very much. Now, I do understand that there were just some agreed facts that I need to be made aware of.
Yes, Your Honour, that's correct. First and foremost, there's no CCTV footage in the case.
Thank you.
There's a no comment record of interview.
Yes.
The issue, as the prosecution sees it, is one primarily of identification. Flowing from that, Your Honour, this was a case where there was no need for an identity parade to be conducted from some identification evidence that will be led by the prosecution.
All right, well, look, thank you very much for that. Well, ready to proceed, gentlemen. So, Mr. Edwards, you can call your first witness.
Yes, Your Honour. Prosecution calls Maria Mercedes.
Thank you. Yes, well, Maria Mercedes, if she could come to the witness box, please. Ms. Mercedes, would you raise your hand, please, and repeat after me? I promise to tell the truth.
I promise to tell the truth.
The whole truth.
The whole truth.
And nothing but the truth.
And nothing but the truth.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Your Honour. Ms. Mercedes, can you please tell His Honour your full name?
Maria Mercedes.
And do you work at the Moorabbin Coles?
Yes.
What role do you have at the Moorabbin Coles?
I'm the store manager.
I just want to take you back to Wednesday 2 years ago when you were working.
Yes.
Were you working at approximately 1 o'clock?
Yes, I was.
What did you see during that time?
I saw two men in the sock aisle and they stole socks.
Okay. Just those two men that you saw in the stock aisles that you say stole socks, what were they wearing?
Black hoodies.
Both of them wearing black hoodies?
Yes, they were.
What can you tell His Honour about their other clothing?
I don't remember.
So it's just the black hoodies that you can remember?
Yes.
What did you do in response to seeing them steal the socks?
I shouted at them.
Okay. What did they do in response?
They ran off.
In which direction did they run?
Towards the car park, I think.
And what did you do when they ran off?
I tried to chase them, but then I lost them.
Yeah. Where did you lose them?
Just at the entrance of the store.
You lost them at the entrance. Can I take it from that you didn't go beyond the entrance to the
No,
shop?
I didn't.
I just want to take you back to when you say you saw one of them steal the socks.
Yeah.
Where did that person put the socks?
I think in his pocket.
And it was just in the same person who took the socks put them back into his pocket?
I think they did, yeah.
Thank you for that. Now, did you have a break later in the day?
I did.
What time was that?
Around 2 p.m.
And where'd you have that break?
At the back end of the store near the car park.
And who did you see while you were having that break?
I saw one of them.
When you say one of them, do you mean one of the men that you saw earlier in the day?
Yes, I did.
What was that man wearing?
Black hoodie.
How far away from him were you?
Around 20 to 30 meters.
What did you do in response to seeing him there?
I called the police.
Have you had any other involvement with the man after that?
No, I didn't.
Thank you, Your Honour. No further questions.
Yes, thank you. Yes, Mr. Barnes.
Thank you, Your Honour. Ms. Mercedes, on this day, when you're in the aisle, were there other people in the aisle?
I think there was one other person, yeah.
Okay. And in relation to the two men you say you saw, they're both wearing black hoodies?
Yes, they were.
You're not able to say anything else about what they were wearing?
No.
Did you see one or both of them reach into the sock department of the aisle?
I did, yes.
Okay. Both of them or one of them?
I think it was one of them.
Okay. And you think that person put the socks in their trousers?
A pocket, either the hoodie or the trousers, I don't remember.
Okay. And you saw them leave together?
Yes.
Just in relation to the car park, again, you saw a person in a black hoodie, but you don't remember anything else about them?
No.
Okay. You didn't see the socks again?
No.
Okay. No further questions, thank you, sir.
Yes, thank you. Is there any re-examination?
There's no re-examination and the witness can be excused, Your Honour.
Thank you. Ms Mercedes, you're excused. You can step down and leave the courtroom. Thank you. Yes, Mr Edwards.
Your Honour, the prosecution calls Mr Larry Leopold as our next witness. He will be the last witness in the case.
Thank you. Well, we'll ask Mr Leopold to come into the courtroom to be sworn to give evidence. Thank you. Yes, thank you, Mr Leopold. If you could just raise your hand, please, and repeat after me. I promise to tell the truth.
I promise to tell the truth.
The whole truth.
The whole truth.
And nothing but the truth.
Nothing but the truth.
Thank you. Yes, Mr Edwards.
Thank you, Your Honour. Mr Leopold, can you please tell His Honour your full name?
Larry Leopold.
And what do you do for work?
I'm retired.
Now, I just want to take you back to the Moorabbin Coles 2 years ago, Wednesday.
Yep.
What were you doing at the Coles that day?
Just going to do my weekly shopping. I always shop there on pension days.
And how did you get there?
Drove my car.
And did you park in the car park?
I did park in the car park. I usually park a little bit over to one side, but this time I couldn't get my spot, so I parked out the front of the supermarket.
And from there, did you walk towards the
Yeah,
supermarket?
I just got out of my car and walked towards the supermarket.
What did you see as you were walking towards the supermarket?
I just two men running out of the supermarket quite rapidly, so it gave me the idea that something had happened inside the supermarket.
And what were the men wearing?
They're both wearing similarly dressed, both wearing black hoodies. One of them, or both wearing tracksuit pants. One was a grey colour, the other one was more of a light brown, reddy, browny sort of colour, as I remember.
So what you're certain about is the black hoodies?
Black hoodies.
What about the pants? Is that something you're not certain about or?
Not 100%, but I do recollect that they would differ. My memory is that they were slightly different.
When you were walking towards the supermarket and they were coming towards you, could you see anything behind them?
I couldn't see anything behind them, no. I could hear someone yelling out, but I couldn't actually see anything behind them.
What could you hear them yelling out?
I couldn't, it was like someone was screaming at them, stop or get out or something along those lines. It just sounded like there'd been some sort of commotion.
Now, taking you back to where you were observing these young men running towards you, what did you do?
I thought I could perhaps try and stop the one in front, so I lunged out towards them and tried to grab the one that was in front.
And what happened when you did that?
He basically got the better of me and hit me on the side of the jaw, and I basically went to the ground.
And could you observe anything when you went to the ground?
No. Next thing I remember is a young lady waking me up on the ground and saying, "Are you okay?"
Can you remember what the man who struck you was wearing?
In my memory is that he was wearing the black hoodie and grey tracksuit.
Have you seen those men again?
No.
In terms of your jaw, did you suffer any injury?
No, the jaw was sore for a while and I had a bit of a headache, but there was no lasting injuries or effects from the blow.
Thank you. No further questions for the witness, Your Honour.
Yes, thank you. Mr Leopold, you'll now be asked some questions by Mr Barnes. Yes, Mr Barnes.
Thank you, Your Honour. Mr Leopold, just in relation to this day, you say you saw two men?
Yes.
Yes, and in relation to the pants they were wearing, one of them was wearing, I think you said, a brown colour tracksuit pants.
My memory is that one of them had grey and one of them was sort of a browny reddy sort of a colour, yes.
All right. And the man that hit you, you think was wearing the grey tracksuit pants?
That's how I remember it, yes.
Okay. Did you see where the other man was when you got struck?
Not specifically. I had the impression that he was somewhere behind the person. They were running out together, but...
Okay. Have you seen, or did you see a man in a black hoodie with reddy brown tracksuit pants at any other time that day?
No.
No further questions. Thank you, sir.
Yes, any re-examination, Mr.
No
Edwards?
re-examination. Mr. Leopold can be excused, and that is also the case for the prosecution.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Leopold, you can step down. You're now excused. You can leave the courtroom.
Thank you, Your Honour.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Barnes.
Your Honour, I call Max Melba.
Thank you. Melba, if you'd just come into the witness box, please. Now, Mr. Melba, if you just raise your hand, please, and repeat after me. I promise to tell the truth,
I promise to tell the truth,
the whole truth,
the whole truth,
and nothing but the truth.
and nothing but the truth.
Yes, thank you. Yes, Mr. Barnes.
Mr. Melba, could you tell the court your full name?
Max Melba.
Okay. And I understand you're between jobs at the moment. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm unemployed.
Okay. Now, if I can just take you back to the Moorabbin supermarket a couple of years ago. You've heard some evidence in court today about you or a person being at the supermarket in the black hoodie. You were charged in relation to a couple of incidents alleged to have happened at that supermarket. Is that right? Were you at the supermarket on that day?
I was, yes.
Okay. And you were with another person?
Yes, my friend Gary.
Okay. And what was Gary wearing?
Gary was wearing, I believe, tracksuit pants. I believe the color was grey.
Okay. What colour pants were you wearing?
I was wearing light brown pants.
And what sort of pants were they?
Tracksuit pants.
Okay. And were Gary's pants tracksuit pants as well?
I believe so.
Okay. Now, you've heard an allegation that you stole some socks from an aisle at the supermarket. What do you say about that allegation?
That's incorrect. I didn't do it.
Okay. Did you see, and you've seen Ms. Mercedes in court today, but have you seen her before?
No, I haven't.
Just in relation to an incident that is alleged to have happened in the car park, do you remember anything happening in the car park?
No, to my extent. I was just wandering around.
Okay. So when you left the store, where did you go?
I was just waiting for my friends.
Okay. Whereabouts did you wait?
In the car park, just waiting to be picked up.
All right. You've heard an allegation today that somebody struck Mr. Leopold. Firstly, have you seen Mr. Leopold before?
I haven't seen him before.
Okay. Did you strike anyone on that day?
No, I didn't.
Thank you. No further questions. Just wait there. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Edwards.
Thank you. Mr. Melba, this happened 2 years ago, didn't it?
Around 2 years ago, yes.
You'd agree with me that that gives you plenty of time to think about what happened?
I wouldn't say so.
That I'd put it to you that you could recall the pants that you were wearing?
No.
I'd put it to you that you're making the evidence up today
No, I'm
in
not.
court. That you're telling this court that it was effectively your friend that you were with that day.
I wouldn't say so. I don't know what he was doing.
And you're just trying to avoid getting into trouble now
I'm not.
because you've had plenty of time to get your story straight before coming to court today, haven't you? I put it to you that you're lying. Thank you, Your Honour. No further questions.
Yes, thank you. Any re-examination?
No re-examination, Your Honour.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Melba. You can come and take a seat back in the body of the courtroom.
Thank you.
Your Honour, that's the case for the defence.
Yes, thank you. Well, gentlemen, obviously this is a factual dispute to some extent, but it involves issues around identification. So are there any submissions either of you would like to make? Mr. Edwards, any submissions you would like to make?
Noting what Your Honour says, I'll be brief and to the point
Yes,
on that
thank you.
point. What I'd make the submission is, Your Honour, from the prosecution case, Your Honour has a consistent factual narrative across the prosecution witnesses who all gave evidence in my submission that was honest, that it was reliable, and that where there was some slight change in their evidence, that is, in my submission, variable change that exists with individual human beings going about their lives having to then recall something from a number of years ago. It's in my submission, it's not fatal to the prosecution case because what is consistent is the recollections of the black hoodies in terms of Miss Mercedes seeing the black hoodies in the Coles, in the sock aisle, seeing the socks taken, placed in, then they leave the store. Again, this man is in a black hoodie. They then go out, they then run into Mr. Leopold. Mr. Leopold is struck again by a man in a black hoodie. And then later on, not an hour later, when Miss Mercedes is back on her break, she sees a man in a black hoodie again while she's out having her break. She makes that observation from some 20 metres distance, and it's the same person that she saw place the socks in a pocket in the store. In the prosecution case is that the continuing narrative is consistent and that the identification made by Miss Mercedes in the smoke on her break is that of Mr. Melba, and that what Your Honour can reason from that back through the consistent narratives of the black hoodies is that it was Mr. Melba who took the socks in the Coles, that it was Mr. Melba who then ran out, that it was Mr. Melba who struck Larry Leopold. The consistency of the hoodies, the consistency of the narratives is what in my submission gives Your Honour rise to be satisfied beyond a reasonable doubt that it was indeed the person who offended in terms of the theft and of the assault was Max Melba, and that Your Honour, noting that beyond a reasonable doubt is the highest standard to law, Your Honour can still find him guilty of both charges.
Yes, well, thank you, Mr. Edwards. Perhaps I can just ask you to comment on this fact. Miss Mercedes, who's clearly seen two men, one of whom takes property, is really unable to say anything other to the court than there were two men and they were both wearing black hoodies. There's no description of a person's height. She's unable to say what the men are wearing. Doesn't that make it very difficult to accept her evidence when she says an hour later I saw a man in a black hoodie and that was the man? The difficulty that there's no other material around the identification makes it fairly unreliable, doesn't it?
What I'd perhaps answer it this way, Your Honour, the reliability comes from the effluxion of time being quite a short period of time. That it was the initial observation followed by the subsequent observation have occurred when over a very short period of time, and if there was a much larger time gap, I would be more willing to concede the point that Your Honour makes in terms of the unreliability. In my submission, because it is a short period of time, that Your Honour can still find her observations as being reliable in the circumstances.
Okay, and then if I could just tease out one other matter in relation to Mr. Leopold. What I'm really being asked to do is to say, because he heard a voice and two people running, I should say that there were the two men who assaulted him were the two men who committed the theft. But he's unable to identify anyone, really, so it's a matter of trying to infer backwards and say, well, this must have been the same men. Dangerous thing. I can only draw an inference if it's the only reasonable inference on the facts, can't I?
I accept that, Your Honour. That's ultimately a factual question that Your Honour, as a trier of fact, as well as trier of law, has to rule on. But there it is, the safety and the reasoning back comes from the short time periods that we are talking about in this matter.
All right. Yes, look, thank you. I understand that. Thanks, Mr. Edwards. Yes, Mr. Barnes.
Your Honour, we would say this is the case squarely about identification. Your Honour is familiar, no doubt, with the authorities, including the High Court's decision in Alexander.
And they talk about the need for the court to carefully weigh and assess such evidence because judicial experience is that people can be convicted mistakenly on strong identification evidence. So this evidence has to be scrutinised very carefully.
That's so, sir. And in this particular case, what you have is you have two men in black hoodies. You don't have any identification of the pants that they were wearing by Ms. Mercedes. You've heard the evidence from my client, uncontradicted, that he was wearing reddy brown tracksuit pants, that his friend was wearing grey tracksuit pants. In relation to the theft, again, you've got a very, very broad description, two men in hoodies, but nothing more. Now, in relation...
Are entitled to infer from the descriptions that are given that this was really a very fleeting observation?
Yeah, we would say you've got a fleeting observation in an aisle in a supermarket. It all happens in a very short space of time. Two men, one is alleged to have taken some socks, we don't know who, and then leave the store very, very quickly. So you're talking about a very, very limited period of observation. Now, in relation to the second period of observation, which is in the car park, again, all that you have is I saw a man in a black hoodie in the car park. No other description of that person, as Your Honour has already alluded to in discussion with my friend. The second issue is in relation to Mr. Leopold. He says, and he was asked about it in cross-examination, and he confirmed that the person that he saw hit him, who he thinks struck him, was a person wearing grey tracksuit pants. Now that's very telling because, as I said earlier, Your Honour, my client's uncontradicted evidence was he's wearing reddy brown tracksuit pants.
Yes.
So we would say it's unsafe to convict in relation to Mr. Leopold, and that in relation to the theft, so that's the assault, in relation to the theft, you've got the problems with identification, the sort of problems that were talked about by Justice Mason in Alexander's case.
Yes.
And again, it would be dangerous to convict in the circumstances.
Yes, thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Harris. Yes, well, this is a case where I can be satisfied that Miss Mercedes saw two people in her store, the Moorabbin Coal store, at about 1 p.m. She said that both men were wearing black hoodies, that one man took some property off the shelf, put it in his pocket. When she called out, they ran away. The opportunity for observation was over a very, very short time frame, and that is confirmed by the fact that Miss Mercedes can really give no other evidence of identification apart from the fact that the men were wearing the two black hoodies. The men leave the store. She doesn't know what happened to them after that, immediately after that. I then have the evidence of Mr. Leopold that two men ran towards him, that he did hear some words and that one of the men assaulted him. And he says that that man was wearing grey track pants. As far as the evidence of the assault is concerned, the evidence there is far too thin to justify a finding of guilt against Mr. Melba. There's really no evidence of his involvement in the assault. The person who assaulted Mr. Leopold wore grey track pants. There's no dispute on the evidence that Mr. Melba, who might have been, was present on that day at the supermarket, was wearing completely different coloured pants. It would be dangerous to convict a man in those circumstances. In relation to the theft, the Crown quite properly points me to the fact that an hour after the alleged theft, Miss Mercedes is out the front of the store having a cigarette, where she sees a man 20 or 30 metres from her, who she says was the same man she saw engaged in the theft earlier in the day. The difficulty with that is again that the early observations were very short and fleeting and rely really on the identification as being the black hoodie. And what concerns me is that an hour later, when she sees a man 20 to 30 metres away in a black hoodie, she forms a belief that that was the man, but I'm not satisfied beyond reasonable doubt that it was the man. And so in those circumstances, both charges will be marked dismissed.
As Your Honour pleases.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honour.